Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my childhood books project, and this was again created by Paul at the Accidental Bookseller. And this is pretty much a video you can make where you just talk about some of your favorite childhood books, and just yeah. So it's a nice bit of nostalgia to go back to. And I thought, for my third video in this little project, I will talk about the book that got me into classics pretty much, and that is a big thing because classics. I've always been a classics girly at heart, and the book that actually done that for me was Dracula by Bram Stoker, 1897. Like, what do we say about Dracula? I read this for school. I was assigned this randomly, probably year 9, so 14, 15-ish. I never done Shakespeare in school, but I've randomly done Dracula, which is, I think, a pretty cool idea to do Dracula as like a school read. I don't know why. It's such a weird idea. It's kind of like picking Jules Verne or H.G. Wells. I think they'd be really good as well. Or even Christie. But anyway, I read Dracula, instantly fell in love with it. I love the ambitiousness of this book, really. I love the layout, how it's epistolary at times. I really enjoyed, I remember the first time reading it, and genuinely being shocked by how effective the horror elements of this book are, especially when it comes to a lot of the vampire stuff that that have kind of been left behind. Like, vampires don't turn into, dogs and wolves and all that. They turn to bats now. And, a lot of, the stake through the heart and fun stuff like that. Or even when Dracula just randomly shapeshifts like the bottom half of his body to spider legs and, just crawls around the castle, is kind of insane. And I love that imagery so much. And I know a lot of people don't like Dracula because there's some people out there that don't like it. I've never met any of those people. But because of how light this kind of is on horror, because Dracula isn't really the main character in this novel at all. It's very much a book of its time when it comes to that stuff. It's very Victorian in terms of if someone's name is on the title of the book, they're not going to appear for like a good majority of the book. Think of Shirley by Charlotte Bronte or someone like that, for example. And Dracula's kind of the same. He doesn't really appear, but when he does, it's just so fierce. Like, it's iconic. This wasn't the first ever vampire story. It's been around for God knows how long. Obviously think of Camilla too, or if you want to go a bit older, John Polidori's The Vampire, which is barely any pages just because it's so short. And it's interesting because that one has no bite marks. As I don't know, I thought that was really cool. Is this my favorite vampire retelling? Like, maybe, yeah, it honestly is, to be honest, because I've always been like, maybe I prefer John Polidori, but then I reread it recently and I was like, wow, there's really nothing to it. I think if the John Polidori fleshed it out into a short novel or even just as long as Dracula, I think it would have been probably a bit more of a contender than it kind of is now. It's a bit more of just a relic of its time. And I think if, again, Polidori leaned into more of the vampirisms, but because he was so ahead of his time, he didn't get really the chance to, but it walked, pretty much. The vampire walked so Dracula could run later in the 1800s. And what do you say about this book? Big bestseller when it came out. Very interesting when it comes to its publishing history. And also, this book literally gave us Nosferatu. As much as Bram Stoker's wife absolutely did not want that to happen later on, because she was very protective of the rights to Bram Stoker's works. But most importantly, Dracula, because Bram, outside of his book, has a really weird career. In that he never really wrote anything good outside of Dracula. I've done a handful of his stuff. His debut, I can't remember what it's called, but obviously, the White Worms? I've got to look at the inside here. Like, I've done The Snake Pass, Jewels of Seven Stars, The Lady of the Shroud. I've done all that stuff. And obviously you got Dracula's Guest too, which was a chapter that was meant to be in Dracula, but never made it into the book. Bram cut it out, and it could sneak in. Like, it's not the worst thing ever. And so I'm just always been shocked with Bram Stoker in that he kind of never wrote anything on this level again. Because you have other authors like, again, Jules Verne Orwell's, or where they have like the big novel. And then you find they're really consistent when it comes to quality, where Bram just didn't have that. There is some really interesting stuff outside of fiction that Bram wrote. He done, I think, an interview with Winston Churchill, which is really weird to think that they crossed paths, because Bram lived all the way, and I think he died in 1912. I could be wrong. I know he died like literally a couple years before World War One, which is kind of insane to think. But he kind of died in the same time period as Tolstoy. Like, that's kind of weird. Or even the fact that Tolstoy literally nearly lived to see World War One itself is such a weird fact that blows my mind. But yeah, Bram had very strong connections to Churchill, which I think no one talks about. Because Churchill really randomly loved Dracula, and I just find that really cool, because you don't expect Churchill, the big figure Churchill, to read, fun horror novels like Dracula, but he did. And also, I'd also have to include Bram Stoker's letters to Walt Whitman, the alleged romance they had. My dear Bram, or whatever it was. Some of them are really funny, because there's some editions of Dracula, like the Penguin, like cloth-bound classics, that include their letters together, and it's very sus. It's very fruity. Something's going on, and even the fact that Bram burnt his letters that he sent to Walt Whitman, got rid of all the evidence. Is very sus, but also Walt Whitman kept everything, which is interesting. When you see photos of them and you're like, I could ship them together, like I get it. But yeah, so that's a bit of a weird tangent, but I'm just shocked that Bram doesn't have, a big second novel that everyone talks about, because I think Dracula just takes up so much space. It's kind of, is Death of the Author in a lot of ways, because this novel it's kind of like a Pride and Prejudice, or Three Musketeers, or insert whatever, that has taken on such a life of its own that it kind of doesn't matter what Bram intended it to be in terms of critiquing the Victorian culture of the time. I find really cool. And it's very subtext in here, but I think it's really interesting, the social critiques that Bram puts into this novel. There's some really funny moments. My favorite part of Dracula is when, like, someone will be writing like their little epistolary diary letter, whatever it is, and they're like, I can hear Dracula coming up the stairs. I'm like, girl, run, like, stop writing your letter, go run away, because blow out that candle and drop that ink quill, and just get out of there, don't keep writing your letter. I just find stuff like that very interesting. And of course, when Jonathan Harker is surrounded and Dracula goes, get away from him, he's mine. I'm like, oh my god, the gay subtext. I kind of love it so much, even though it's not really there in the same way that a novel like Moby Dick is. I just find that really cute. And what do you want me to say? It's Dracula. Like, this book, like, literally. There's some interesting stuff if you don't know a lot of the vampire lore. And also, again, the stuff that didn't stick when it comes to the vampire lore here, I find really interesting too. Stoker's writing is really solid. I get how people are let down by Dracula, again, because of the whole, Dracula's kind of not really there. The other characters are great here too. Poor Lucy, she deserves so much better than what she got. I really have nothing to say. In terms of other stuff you could read, that's Dracula related, of course you can do Anno Dracula, which is, I can't remember who wrote it, but someone decides to combine Dracula, like an alternative fiction where Dracula's invasion, if you would, of England actually was successful and he didn't die, and Sherlock gets involved in this, because Sherlock Holmes and Dracula came out were being published during the same time, which I thought was always such a cool thing, because they're kind of similar but also kind of not. Like, I don't know, it's just such a weird thing to look and see what's coming out, especially in the later Victorian age, because so much in terms of when we talk about the Victorians is really dedicated to, like, the 1850s, 1860s, 1870s, like the middle period, and also, like, pretty much you don't think of, like, the late 1800s still, compared to earlier decades in the Victorian age. But also, you could also do The Beetle by Richard Marsh, which came out at the same time as Dracula, was a bigger success than Dracula, but didn't have the lasting impact. That's another one you could do. Also, you can do Bram's gay letters to Walt Whitman, which is really cute and fun. And so that's all I have to say. This is literally the book that got me into classics. Loved it. The next classic I randomly moved on to after Dracula was really weird because I read it and I was like, oh my god, what's another classic book? And I picked up Moby Dick randomly. I don't know why. And was absolutely, there was no going back after Moby Dick. That was still probably my favorite book ever. But this will always have a soft place in my heart. I've probably read it 2-3 times ish by now, maybe. I am due for a reread. I'm thinking, obviously, I'll just say it for Victober or something like that, but who knows? Because there obviously is Daily Dracula as well, which is, where you do the novel chronologically. So whenever like the letter's written, you read that letter on the day, and you kind of make your way through the novel that way as well, which is fun. I've always wanted to do it, but I just haven't committed to it. Yeah, this isn't the first edition I read Dracula in. I had like a Penguin Black that was absolutely torn to shreds because I read it so much. And I used to be one of those people, I know people are going to hate this, where instead of just doing a normal dog-eared page, I used to do like a full page dog-ear, and it just, silverworms got to it too at some point, and it just literally fell apart. I didn't really take care of my books in high school, but I did find this really pretty old vintage edition of Dracula. I will say there has never been a really pretty edition of Dracula in terms of covers. It's such a simple design. I feel like it's kind of like Moby Dick. It's a simple design, but I think people get too ambitious with, like Kafka too can throw in there. But I feel like the vintage is my favorite so far. At least when it comes to paperbacks, you're gonna find I'd never liked the Penguin one with like the black silhouette in the foreground. Just didn't do much for me. But I will say the Reader's Digest is the most fierce cover I've ever seen of Dracula. I'm on the hunt for it. If you have it, I'm so jealous of you. And send it to me, please, because it's got like that really deep purple to it, and it's so cool, and I need that in my life. There's also, annotated, complete annotated editions of Dracula too, that give you context and a lot of more stuff outside of just the novel and just the rare footnotes you get, because you don't really need notes for Dracula, but if you're a die-hard Dracula fan, you'll love that too. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Dracula, the book that literally got me into classics. It's not my favorite anymore. I don't know why. It's kind of just slowly moved down. It's not bad. It's just there's more books I prefer when it comes to classics. I still would take this over anything Bram wrote or The Beetle or anything like that. But I still have a very soft spot for this book in my heart. And yeah, so that's a wrap up on my books, my childhood books project, 3 videos. And yeah, let me know what you think of Dracula. And yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.